head-staking incident. Otávio Hadaro da Silva, a 20-year-old amateur referee from Maranhão, Brazil. On June 30, 2013, he was assigned to oversee yet another amateur game. During the match, Josemir dos Santos Abuero began arguing violently with da Silva after being shown a red card for a harsh foul. The tension escalated when Miranda refused to leave and began to fight with the referee. He threw a punch, prompting da Silva to pull out a knife and stab him multiple times. The player fell to the ground, bleeding heavily, and later died before help could arrive. When bruised fans and family found out about his death, dozens of men broke through the sidelines while others picked up rocks, sticks, and pieces of metal. Otávio tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. Within seconds he was surrounded. They beat da Silva mercilessly, stoned him, and dragged his body across the ground. His arms and legs were cut apart, quartered, and the pieces of his body were scattered near the goalposts. Finally, someone placed his head on a wooden stake beside the field, leaving it there for all to see. Police arrested several suspects, while FIFA and human rights groups condemned the violence. André Escobar. André Escobar became one of the most shocking tragedies in World Cup history. In 1994, when Escobar was 27 years old, he was a talented defender who represented Colombia at the 1994 World Cup in the United States. On June 22, 1994, Colombia faced with the United States in a crucial group stage match. The team was already on the brink of elimination. The score was 1-0 in favor of the United States. A cross came in from the U.S.'s wing. In an attempt to intercept the ball, it glanced off of Escobar's foot and sailed past his own goalkeeper, slamming into the net. The stadium fell into stunned silence. Escobar sank to his knees, his hands clutching his head in disbelief and regret as he realized he had just scored an own goal. That single misstep not only shocked fans around the world, but also directly led to Colombia's elimination from the tournament. Just days later, on July 2, 1994, Escobar left a local bar in Medellin, unaware of the danger that awaited him. As he walked to his car, a group of men approached, their faces tense with anger. Shouts of blame and fury erupted, and before anyone could react, gunfire rang out. Escobar was struck multiple times, bullets tearing through his chest and back. He stumbled, collapsing onto the wet pavement, his hands reaching instinctively for the wounds. Bystanders screamed and tried to help, but it was too late. Authorities later arrested Humberto Munoz Castro, who was in his 26s at the time. During interrogation, he confessed that the attack had been carried out as a revenge for Escobar's own goal against the United States. He was subsequently sentenced to 43 years in prison, later reduced to 26 for good behavior. The football community and the nation were stunned. Teammates, fans, and the media mourned deeply, grappling with the senselessness of the death. Unidentified Object Incident. Albert Abosi Bonjongo, a 24-year-old Cameroonian striker, was a player of the JS Kabylie, one of the Algeria's most prestigious clubs. On August 23, 2014, he played a home match against USM Alger. JS Kabylie lost 2-1 against USM Alger. Abosi scoring their only goal. As the final whistle blew, frustration rippled through the home crowd. Some angry fans began shouting and throwing objects towards the players as they left the pitch. Amidst the confusion, a heavy object was hurled from the stands. It struck Abosi violently on the head. He staggered a few steps, clutching his head before collapsing to the ground. Panic broke out. Teammates and medical staff rushed to his aid as blood pooled beneath him. He was rushed to a nearby hospital, but doctors could do nothing. The blow had fractured his skull, causing fatal brain injuries. Within hours, the tragic news was confirmed. Albert Abosi was dead when he was only 24 years old. Despite multiple investigations, the truth has never been proven, and the killer has never been identified. Lightning strike incident. Luyanda Ntshangase, a 20-year-old South African midfielder, was playing for Maritzburg United in the Premier Soccer League on March 1, 2018, when he took part in a friendly match at the Juan Smuts Stadium in Pietermaritzburg. Around 3 p.m., the sky had darkened, clouds swirling above as the players continued their game under the light rain. Without warning, a bolt of lightning ripped through the sky and struck the pitch. It hit Ntshangase directly, sending electricity through his body. He collapsed instantly, his jersey scorched and smoke rising faintly from his chest. Players and fans froze in disbelief before rushing to his side. Paramedics performed emergency treatment on the field and rushed him to the hospital in an induced coma. Doctors fought tirelessly to save him, but the lightning had caused severe burns and irreversible internal damage. For 2 long months, his family and teammates clung to hope. However, his condition worsened, and on May 4, 2018, Ntshangase was pronounced dead. He was only 21. Knee collision accident. Jose Antonio Gallardo, a 29-year-old goalkeeper for Malaga CF, In December of 1986, he played a league match against Celta de Vigo. While the match was intense, the audience cheered excitedly. Celta de Vigo launched a dangerous counterattack. Their striker, Baltazar, broke free and sprinted towards Malaga's goal. Gallardo charged off the line to intercept the ball. Baltazar swung his leg to shoot. Instead of striking the ball cleanly, his knee smacked violently into Gallardo's head with a sickening crack that echoed through the stadium. Gallardo fell and lay motionless on the ground. Teammates frantically waved for medical help while Baltazar, shaken, knelt beside him. Blood trickled from Gallardo's temple as doctors rushed onto the pitch. He was rushed to a hospital in Galicia. After 3 tense hours of intensive care, he regained consciousness, though the damage was severe: partial facial paralysis and short-term memory loss. But on January 7, 1987, after having lunch with his family, he suddenly felt dizzy and complained of a piercing headache. Moments later, he collapsed. His family rushed him to a local medical center where doctors discovered a massive cerebral hemorrhage originating from the left temporal lobe and spreading across 3/4 of his brain. He slipped into a deep coma and passed away days later. Stadium Stampede Accident. On May 9, 2001, Ghana's capital city, Accra, was hosting a fierce Premier League rivalry match between Accra Hearts of Oak and Asante Koto at the Oni John Sports Stadium. The atmosphere was electric. Drums, chants, and flags filled the air as over 40,000 fans packed the stands. The game was tense and emotional, as always, between these two football giants. When the final whistle blew, Hearts of Oak had scored 2 late goals to win 2-1. Furious Koto supporters began throwing bottles and plastic seats onto the field. The police, who had been stationed around the stadium, reacted by firing tear gas into the crowd in an attempt to restore order. Panic erupted instantly. People began coughing, choking, and scrambling for narrow exits. Fans stumbled over one another as dense tear gas spread. The few exit gates that were open were quickly overwhelmed, and those trying to escape found themselves trapped against locked barriers. Hundreds were pressed together, screaming for air, while others were trampled beneath the chaos. By the time the smoke cleared, 126 spectators lay dead. 116 deaths resulted from compressive asphyxia, and 10 fans died from trauma. No medical incident. Guy Chingoma, a 22-year-old midfielder for Gabonese club FC 105, Libreville, was a player for Gabon's national team. On February 9, 2008, he stepped onto the pitch in Libreville against US Mbinanzami. Around the 35th minute of the match, while the two teammates were battling for the ball in the midfield, Guy Chingoma sprinted towards an incoming pass, his eyes fixed on the ball. At the same moment, an opposing defender lunged forward for the same touch. The two collided violently, shoulder to chest, their momentum crashing together with full force. While the other got up quickly, Chingoma stumbled backward, clutching his chest. Then his knees gave way. He collapsed, face first onto the grass, motionless. Players froze in confusion before rushing towards him, waving frantically for medical help. The tragedy deepened when it became clear that no medical staff were immediately available. There was no ambulance on standby, and the first aid responders lacked basic emergency equipment. Players and coaches tried to revive him themselves, performing chest compressions. A few hours later, Chingoma was rushed to a nearby hospital, but doctors could only confirm he had gone into cardiac arrest. He was pronounced dead shortly after arrival, just 22 years old. Lamia Flight 2933 accident. On November 28, 2016, Lamia Flight 2933 departed from Viro Viro International Airport in Santa Cruz de la Sierra, Bolivia. 73 passengers and 4 crew members, including Asociación Chaparrejo de Futbol. According to the flight recorder, the players joked, filmed videos, and spoke out about the match ahead against Atlético Nacional in Medellin. The accident happened around 10 p.m. The crew reported an electrical failure and requested an emergency landing. In reality, investigators later discovered the plane had run out of fuel. As the flight descended towards Medellin, all 4 engines were already dead. The cabin shook violently and then went eerily quiet, with only the sound of rushing wind. At 10:15 p.m., the aircraft clipped the top of a ridge near Cerro Gordo. The left wing struck first, shearing off against the mountainside. The fuselage slammed into the ground at a high velocity, breaking apart into several sections as it scraped down the slope. There was no explosion because there was no fuel left to burn. When the rescue team arrived, 71 people were dead, including entire squad. Only 6 survived. Head collision incident. Serhiy Perkun, 23, was a talented Ukrainian goalkeeper playing for CSKA Moscow. On August 19, 2001, CSKA Moscow faced Anzhi Manchakala. The tempo was high, the home crowd loud, and both teams were fighting for every ball. Perkun played aggressively, rushing off the line whenever danger approached. Midway through the second half, a long pass sent Anzhi's striker Bund Bundov sprinting towards the goal. Perkin charged forward at full speed, determined to stop the attack before the shot could be taken. One crack sounded and both men collided headfirst with full momentum, a terrifying crash that silenced the stadium. Bundov collapsed instantly, motionless, while Perkin staggered for a moment before falling to the ground. Medical teams sprinted onto the pitch. Perkin suffered multiple skull and facial fractures, but Perkin's condition was even more severe. He was rushed to the hospital where scans revealed massive brain hemorrhage. On August 28th, he died from a cerebral hemorrhage caused by traumatic brain injury. Wall collision incident. Hrabji Kustic, 24, was a Croatian midfielder and defender for NK Zadar. On March 29, 2008, during a home league match against HNK Sabalia, tragedy struck within the opening minutes. The ball rolled loose near the sideline, and Kustic raced to challenge an opposing player in a shoulder-to-shoulder duel. Both men collided, their momentum carrying them forward uncontrollably. Only 3 meters from the touchline stood a solid concrete wall separating the pitch from the stands. Unable to stop his run, Kustic was dragged off balance and thrown violently into the wall, his head striking the concrete with a sickening impact that stunned the stadium. He was transported immediately to the local hospital, where doctors performed surgery the following evening to relieve severe swelling and internal bleeding in the brain. Then, on April 2nd, an unexpected infection caused his body temperature to spike rapidly, triggering a catastrophic decline. On the afternoon of April 3, 2008, the hospital confirmed that Kustic had been declared brain dead at 11:51. Marc Vivien Foe. On June 26, 2003, Marc Vivien Foe stepped onto the pitch in Lyon, France, for Cameroon's Confederations Cup semi-final against Colombia. The 28-year-old midfielder was one of the country's most beloved players. Strong, tireless, and known for his commanding presence in the center of the field, the Stade de Gérald was packed with fans waving flags and singing, the summer air buzzing with anticipation. Foe ran endlessly across the pitch, breaking up attacks and driving his teammates forward, as Cameroon fought to defend their narrow 1-0 lead and secure a place in the final. In the 72nd minute, Foe suddenly faltered, his legs buckling beneath him as he clutched his chest in obvious pain. A moment later, he collapsed onto the pitch, motionless. His teammates rushed to his side, their faces pale with alarm. While the referee immediately signaled for medical assistance, the crowd fell silent, the roar of the stadium replaced by gasps and murmurs of shock. Paramedics sprinted onto the pitch, kneeling beside him as he tried to desperately revive him with CPR, pressing on his chest and applying oxygen. Foe's eyes fluttered briefly, but his body remained unresponsive. His teammates formed a protective circle around him, some shouting his name, others helplessly watching. Despite the swift and heroic efforts of the doctors, Foe tragically died on the pitch, leaving the world of football in shock and disbelief. His death sent ripples across the football community. Cameroonian teammates, opponents, and fans mourned deeply, grappling with the suddenness of the tragedy. Foe's passing highlighted the hidden dangers of undiagnosed heart conditions in athletes, leading to greater awareness and stricter medical screenings in professional football. The Zambia team's plane accident. The Zambia national football team plane accident became one of the most heartbreaking tragedies in football history. On April 27, 1993, the Zambian team was traveling to Dakar, Senegal, to play at the Stade Léopold Sédar Senghor, the country's national stadium. They were set to face Senegal in a World Cup 1994 qualifying match. As the plane lifted off from Libreville, Gabon, storm clouds gathered above the Atlantic. According to air traffic control monitoring, heavy rain poured down relentlessly. Thunder rolled in the distance, and the engines strained against the turbulent air. Shortly after takeoff, the aircraft encountered severe storm conditions over the Atlantic. The plane began to struggle against the strong winds and heavy rain. Within minutes, it became clear that the aircraft was facing critical difficulties. Moments later, the aircraft plunged into the ocean, leaving no time for distress calls or rescue. All 30 people on board, Zambia's top players, coaches, and crew, were lost, and a nation's hopes for the 1994 World Cup were tragically dashed. Investigators could not definitively determine the exact cause of the crash, as the plane's black box was never recovered. The families, teammates, and the global football community were left in stunned disbelief. News of the crash reverberated across Africa and the world. Memorials were held and tributes poured in from every corner of the football community. Zambia, devastated by the loss, faced the impossible task of rebuilding its nation's team from the ashes. Montpellier celebration incident. The Montpellier celebration became one of the most heartbreaking moments in World Cup 2022. On the night of December 14, 2022, as France celebrated their 2-0 victory over Morocco in the World Cup semifinals, one young fan joined the crowds, flooding the streets of Montpellier, France. The air was alive with excitement. Flags waving, fireworks bursting, car horns echoing through the city. He ran alongside other supporters in the Paladade district, laughing, cheering, and waving his flag high, caught in the joy of the victory. But beneath the noise and color, the atmosphere carried a tension between rival groups of fans. As the celebration swept through the streets, a car draped with a French flag rolled slowly into the crowd. Then, in an instant, the driver recklessly accelerated in a fit of anger over the match. The car lunged forward, slicing through the mass of people. The young supporter had no time to react as the car suddenly surged into the crowd, its bumper slamming into his legs and chest. He was thrown violently to the ground, scraping along the asphalt as bystanders screamed in terror. Authorities later arrested a 30-year-old man who admitted that he had deliberately driven into the crowd out of frustration over losing a football bet. He was subsequently sentenced to 20 years in prison for manslaughter and reckless endangerment. The celebration quickly descended into silence. Police sealed off the area, and the streets that had moments earlier been filled with joy were left in stunned disbelief. What began as a night of triumph quickly turned to tragedy. Argentina Fan Incident. The Mehdi Hassan incident became one of the most shocking tragedies among World Cup fan conflicts. Mehdi Hassan was a devoted Argentinian supporter, known in his village for his unwavering love of Lionel Messi. In late November 2022, as Argentina faced Mexico in the World Cup group stage, Mehdi gathered with friends and neighbors to watch the match on television. Excitement filled the air across Bangladesh, a nation divided by fierce football loyalties, Argentina and Mexico. Mehdi cheered with unstrained joy, waving his flag every time Argentina attacked. When his team triumphed 2-0, the village square erupted in cheers, drums beating, people dancing, voices chanting Messi's name. But amid the celebration, tension simmered. Not everyone there was celebrating, and some Mexico supporters began to argue, their rivalry turning bitter. At first, it was just shouting, a few angry words exchanged between Mexico team fans, and Mehdi joined in on the heated argument, defending his team's victory. But as the voices grew louder, tempers flared. In the heat of the moment, one man, also a Mexican supporter, lashed out. He pulled out a knife and struck Mehdi during the confrontation. The joyous noise turned into panic and screams as Mehdi fell to the ground, bleeding heavily. Neighbors rushed to help, but by the time he reached the hospital, it was too late. A night meant for football celebration had turned into a moment of unbearable tragedy. Friends rushed him to the hospital, but his injuries were too severe. The young fan who had spent the evening celebrating his team's triumph died before dawn. What should have been a night of shared passion and national excitement ended in a senseless violence. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and tell me which story you want next.